Alright, hey everyone. Today's video, I am just gonna be talking about how I go about drawing arms. I kind of just like, I want to go through like a bunch of different parts of the body and kind of give my opinion and I guess how I go about drawing them. I feel like it might help some people kind of maybe decide how they want to go about drawing the different features and maybe just like opening some options and ideas of like concepts. And this is definitely like not the way to draw arms. I'm probably gonna draw some like goofy arms and probably not like very realistic, but really this is kind of just for fun really. And I just want to do some videos and kind of just come up with like some ideas in real time since it might be pretty fun. So for arms, really when I'm working on the character, I will kind of maybe we'll just start with the torso. So the arm, I like to really connect it with the neck, and I like to really sort of play off of the traps. And I feel like anatomy in general, like I like to lift weights and do like a lot of working out, and I like running, and I like doing like track in high school and different things like that. And I feel like doing weightlifting has really helped sort of like figure out the isolation in different muscles. And so if that's something you really want to do to help with your art, then that I think it really helps for understanding sort of like how the anatomy works as well, and kind of like the actual function. And usually when I'm learning something, I usually get the most out of the function of how the object or thing works. And so I'll kind of draw the arm going off the shoulder since that's what I'm used to. Usually when I like am doing anatomy, I'm so used to drawing it straight with the character. I don't practice like it separately as much since it like is very like the whole body is a very like one unit thing. So that being said, I'll draw maybe his face in here, but we'll keep him a little split off from his body. Maybe we'll put it the head on later, but yeah. So for the arm, I like to, the bicep really is sort of like how the chest is, where it kind of comes off the chest and a similar angle, and the shoulder is kind of like the head of the arm, and it sort of like comes up, and then you have the different heads of the shoulder, and it kind of, I like to make everything as very connected as I can. So the collarbone, I like to sort of like go off and into the upper arm, and this part right here where the collarbone sits and the shoulder sort of like wraps around, and the shoulder also goes into the back a bit. So I'll see if I can color this part in and make it a bit easier to see. And anything that I teach or try to explain, I am not like certified in any way, but just pure my own observation and experience drawing. So take it as you want to, but there might be some useful stuff maybe. But yeah, so this whole top section basically is like your connector to everything else. So that inside part that I was talking that goes to the bicep, kind of like to come off from the chest there. And I'll often do really focus on this shoulder area, and then the bicep is sort of coming off the chest. And then right below, we sort of have like this middle area that comes off the shoulder. And so everything is sort of like a little bit mechanical or interweaving from each other. So any part of anatomy usually has like a part that it comes from and then a part that it connects to. And then, so the bicep, I usually like to exaggerate the vein on the bicep since it gives it a lot of form. And that's usually like when someone's pretty lean, it's usually like one of the more noticeable veins that will show, depending on like someone's genetics and how like thin their skin is. And then off the bicep, I kind of do like this split where you have your the opposite elbow, and then so the bicep will come up and then do the vein to kind of exaggerate that. Yeah, I guess a lot of like any anatomy stuff that I'm gonna make a video on will be a lot of like the outer skin, so how it looks like actually on a character or like on a human. So I think that's like really, I know it's like important to sort of like work from the inside as well, but really the part that people are going to see is the outer, unless like you have a very grotesque scene. But yeah, so I like to really focus on that part, and I think that would probably be the most helpful for you guys as well. But yeah, that split on the inside of the elbow. This arm is very compact. And then the forearm sort of works with the elbow and sort of like that inner line of the arm. And then it'll come down, and the forearm and the elbow sort of. And a lot of the anatomy, like I was saying, so it has like basically a spot where it starts and a spot where it ends. So a lot of the like movement of the arm, like you can kind of see that a lot of my, like if you watch my lines where they're going, there's a lot of like direction to the shape of the arm. And I kind of think of like that sort of flow coming off of the different objects. And especially when I get to the hand, I probably won't talk about hands too much in this video. And I'll leave that in a separate video. But yeah, this is like purely just off of my own experience. And then, so the forearm is basically leading into the hand. But yeah, I will talk about a lot of connecting parts, since that I feel like is really, really important, especially when drawing the whole character like all together, since especially if you're learning a lot of anatomy on the side and then you want to connect all those ideas together. I found that the hardest transition to make is going from doing like these super like no skin, no flesh, like all under muscle, like when you're doing a lot of those studies, it can be a little hard to then transition that into like a living, breathing character that has like skin on the outer layer and hair and all of those things, like going from skulls to actually putting the flesh on. So I think that's kind of like the importance of seeing how these different muscles interact, and sort of like, I guess, how the whole unit works as a whole. The whole unit works as a whole. But yeah, so I'll do a couple others, and then I'll kind of can color in where that skin is. So that'd be a little bit easier to see. So these are a little bit of like more short, stocky, pretty beefy arms. So probably what you would have on like a more muscular person, or maybe like a superhero or that sort of thing. Or if you're doing like a Greek god or something with like a very that sort of look to it. Okay, and then yeah, I could probably talk about a bit of proportion after this. That will also probably be pretty useful. All right. Okay, and then I'll do this other character over here. And these are all just straight arms as well, just going straight down. Yeah, another thing why I suggest kind of like trying to group everything, and a lot of times on my streams and other videos, I'll talk about sort of grouping as many things together as possible, especially when you're learning, to kind of make everything like very usable. I think it's really the best explanation I kind of have for that. But so, especially when I was kind of like, I was saying how the arm, if you just draw the arm on its own, it gets a little hard, especially if you don't draw like the flesh over. Then you have to find a way to then almost relearn how to draw the arm with flesh on it. Like you'll have a better understanding by going deeper and finding out like the inner workings, but you'll have to like figure out then how to incorporate it all together, how it moves together, how things sit in like different poses, and all of that sort of thing. So I'd really recommend, if you can, and just draw like the arm on the character all together. So if you're watching like a video of me doing arms, or faces or whatnot, I would try to draw the at least, if you don't want to draw the whole character, that's fine, but at least draw like a few, like something kind of grouped together, and I think it'll give you a way better like feel and understanding of how these things all go together. And then by the time that you've kind of learned how all of these little pieces of details function on their then you'll kind of have everything like all together already. Yeah, so I will draw, and I kind of messed up like I probably should have just had his head on. I don't know why, but yeah, so especially the one thing is kind of getting these poses to look natural. And so like this like especially having the collarbone like this far out, like it's almost like protruding out of his skin, which doesn't look very natural. So getting these poses to look natural and really grouping these things all together, and then you're practicing like gestures, shading, whatever you want. I would really suggest like making the whole character, or as much as the character you want to do, almost kind of just like incorporating them into how you would already draw your characters. I think is really the best way. So just kind of draw pants to and a lot of times when I'm drawing a character, like how his arm is positioned really affects his other parts of his body too. So to give this character balance with his arm being so bulky and kind of out here, That's why I sort of have drawn like the rest of the waist and his like pelvis and lower section, how it is. And then I try to basically offset the top half by making his sort of frame more balanced. So I will just kind of do a simple messed up hand here, but just kind of want to work quickly enough for the video. So then he's more balanced, and then especially if I do his cast shadow and the floor here, it will sort of like add a bit more weight to the character. And then if I wanted to, and then I think that's like a really good way to practice like usable anatomy and very natural anatomy, is to kind of see like these offsets of, so his arm is here and like it's very minor, but like his neck is facing sort of that way with how his collar is. And you'll just kind of get better and better as you practice and kind of see like different ways to kind of balance it out. But like for this character, I go have him, his legs maybe more like that. And this is still like a very almost like a dancer sort of pose in a way, where I don't really know what he's doing, but at least his character is like kind of balanced. And then these two shadows might cross up a bit here, just kind of in general. But yeah, so how someone's arm is really going to affect the rest of the character's frame too. And then we can just kind of really just put some sort of placeholder in for that one. All right. And then, so we got kind of like the basic, muscular arm to show the different details. And so I will quickly tone those in so you guys can see it a little bit easier. And then like, if you guys are curious of highlights, there is like the top shelf, and on top of these shoulder heads is usually where I'd place the highlight. And then if you really wanted more, you could maybe get away with like the tricep and the forearm. And even if you don't know like all these different sections of the muscles, like a lot of people know sort of like what the bicep is and like a few of the different ones. So just kind of use like whatever knowledge you have. And I really think just kind of feeling it out. Like, I've seen a lot of people really learn anatomy, including myself, by just like mostly feeling it out and not necessarily knowing what is actually happening on a lot of these different parts. Like I know anatomy like well off of drawing it a lot, and also like using it, like working out and different things like that. So through that sort of experience that I've sort of like am chipping away and finding like more and more about it and discovering it as I go. So it's definitely not something that you just need to like master straight out of the box or anything like that. Like you can definitely just have very, very, very basic knowledge that pretty much probably everyone knows or has seen their own arm and that sort of thing. And then just use whatever you have, and you can always like expand off of it. You don't need to like, anyone can draw a face and a body, even though it might not be like good in their mind, but they'll definitely be able to draw even like a stick figure. And I feel like most people can draw more than a stick figure, but they really like psych themselves out and feel like they can't because they haven't done it before, which is kind of a little bit of maybe a lie. I don't know. It depends on the on the person, but I'm sure if a lot of people could easily draw more than a stick figure if they just practiced it a little bit. I think everyone can draw for sure. And yeah, I'll just color this in quick. Alright, I apologize for this video already being pretty long, but there's not too much more for me to talk about on the arms. Really, the 3 different sections that I look out for is the shoulder, which will go off the collarbone, and the shoulder basically has a front side, middle, and back. And then the bicep goes with the chest, and then the shoulder sort of like sits almost on top of it. Well, it does sit on top, but then basically every muscle works with the other types and the rest of the body, and then the bicep, and then the tricep, and then you have your elbow. So I like to use the bicep and the tricep since they're pretty much like across from each other here. And this is, so we have the top, can't really write middle, but we have the middle, which is the bicep and tricep, and then coming off that back, the long head of the tricep goes into the elbow. So the elbow sort of flows off of the mid half there, and then from the elbow, the forearm will flow off of the elbow. So there's a lot of things that are basically like insert, and then you get a reaction and a reaction from like another. So kind of like in and out of each is I guess what I'm trying to say. And then off the forearm, then you have the hand. So yeah, if you can kind of think of it as 3 different parts and they each come off the other, and yeah, I really suggest experimenting with like the proportions. You could kind of look up what the actual proportions are, but if you really experiment and kind of come up with your own, or really just test, because like internally you already know sort of what looks good for the proportion and what it's supposed to be. So it's a lot of like repetition and to sort of like uncover that information. And you can draw the arm like as skinny as you want. Or like if you want to draw someone with a bit more meat on them, then you could sort of like make it a little bit more expanded and play around with like more of the overlap that would start to happen with the skin, and sort of like just experiment. You could start on a skinnier person. Maybe the elbow would be more prominent and more of like the bony areas, like the shoulder, but off the collarbone that we talked about. So if you're doing like a zombie or just a skinnier character, you can mess around with that. So yeah, I'd really suggest kind of just going crazy and really kind of like, and all the anatomy videos that I'm going to be like posting or talking about in the future, I'd really just kind of like really just mess around with it. And that's kind of how I've learned and built up any sort of knowledge that I have about anatomy, is really kind of just making a character with the anatomy, seeing what happens, if it like looks right to me, or if I want to change it. And the more you kind of get yourself familiar with how it feels to draw these different parts, you'll get a lot better at doing so. So yeah, you can really just do. Am I off page? Oh no. Okay. Yeah, and I would really suggest kind of like, even if you, I don't know, if you if you watch this video and now your knowledge of drawing arms is so much more than the rest of the body for drawing, and now you're kind of like self-conscious about, oh, now if I draw the torso and the neck and the face, it won't be as good as the arm. I would just still recommend just going for it. Or if you're like better at certain parts more so than others, like maybe you practice a lot of faces, but you don't know how the rest of the body works, so just put like any sort of knowledge you have of how it works, just kind of put it in as like a placeholder, really. And then you can always draw another character. Like, you'll always have another chance to like correct and redraw something else. So really there is no fear or like reason to fear. I know it's hard to totally not be afraid, because I still am afraid every time I draw, but yeah, you can, it kind of lessens as you kind of know what you're capable of doing. But yeah, so that's probably gonna do it for arms. I hope that helps out a little bit. But yeah, I'll probably do a bunch more anatomy videos with this similar sort of idea of just kind of expressing or showing what I've learned through experience, and just kind of like some ways you can mess around with it. And I mean, I'll probably make like another arm video, honestly, about like adding more imaginative things to it, since this one's very like more human and not so much like crazy proportions and different things, but a little bit more of what you might see on a daily basis. Although this arm is pretty muscular. But yeah, hope that helps, and see you guys in the next one.